Well, each Tuesday we have an opportunity to hear me with a frog in my throat. Still fighting that summer cold, but each Tuesday we have an opportunity to meet one of the doctors from Saddleback Memorial Foundation. And joining us today is Dr. Mark Foster, and he works in family medicine. I guess you'd be kind of called a family practitioner to most people, right?
You betcha. Yep, I do a little bit of everything from geriatrics all the way down to little kids and everything in between. So
what a difference.
Really nice.
That must be nice because you kind of see different people, and this kind of changes things up a little bit.
Variety.
Yeah.
I like the variety component of it. It's really nice.
Now you're dressed in your summer attire.
Yes,
so,
definitely theme-oriented
A little
today.
bit theme-oriented. We want to talk about heat-related illnesses. How important is that to, especially our population here in Laguna Woods Village?
It's extremely important. There's about 400 deaths a year for that, even more during the huge heat waves. There's a large one going on in the Midwest now. And with the elderly population, they're actually amazingly more susceptible, especially the infants too, but also the elderly more than the you or I, for that example, unless we were out, playing golf in Palm Springs or things to that effect.
At 1 o'clock in the afternoon.
Yeah, definitely.
It's kind of surprising because when you think about Southern California, Ken was on with the weather just a while ago, and we're talking about the, high 80s, high 70s, low 80s in that time. And yet people still can suffer from these heat-related illnesses.
Yeah, they can still suffer from it. They can also, when it hits about 85 and especially about 90, so we're hitting in about the next 2 months, it's really important to at least be educated about it. So when they do hit in late July and August, and sometimes here in September, we can at least be prepared. Not as much as some of the other places where it's more humid. That's obviously a lot worse. But we still experience a significant amount here, and especially at the ER.
And what are the time frames during the day when someone can suffer heat-related illnesses? I know, surprisingly, it's a different. It's kind of later in the afternoon sometimes. You
later
just really know.
It's really the 10 to 2s around noon, basically. The biggest times are by far during the heat, when the sun's the highest at the peak of the day. That's where you want to avoid a lot of your strenuous activity. For all your golfers out there, no golfing in the noon hour. Try to get that 6 a.m. tee time. And then also same things with the gardeners and things like that. You don't want to be out gardening at 10, 11, 12, 1, 2 during the heat of the day because you get distracted and it'll sneak up on you.
Definitely. We actually have a tennis facility right next to us, and those guys are busy early in the morning. They're done by 10 or 11 o'clock, and they're out of the heat.
You can get your exercise done and off you go. You got to be very careful. It'll sneak up on you. Most people, they just don't stay hydrated, and little by little you start to either get more confused or more thirsty, and you can actually get behind. And as you get behind, you get sicker even though you're trying to hydrate yourself.
Let's be specific about what kind of heat-related illnesses are there. What are the symptoms, what are the signs, and what would you consider a heat-related illness?
Well, basically it starts out, cramping is by far the most common. I mean, I've gotten that a lot when I used to play a lot of basketball. And that's just, light cramping in the legs. And that should be your first kind of warning sign. And then heat exhaustion is by far what we're, concerned about. And basically, to that point, you can get basically a very pale, cool skin. Your heart rate can go up a little bit. You get a little flushed. And what slowly but surely happens is you start to lose not only the water but the electrolytes, which people forget, and you get slowly confused. And then as your thermoregulatory system, the cooling system of the body, starts to go awry, you get progressively sicker. And it's a huge concern during this point of time. And then it goes into heat stroke. And heat stroke, the key thing to learn is just 911. There's heat stroke needs an ER physician to cool you quickly for lots of IV fluids, for salt replacements and things to that effect.
Is potassium and salt, again, important ingredients to retain a cooling process?
They're very important. Well, the problem is when you sweat, you lose salts and electrolytes, and especially if you have like diarrhea or any kind of urine abnormality, you'll lose more and more salt. So a lot of people replete just with water, and I'm a bigger fan of the sports drinks, the Gatorades on the lighter side of the calories. Got to be a little careful. It's more important to hydrate yourself, but the diabetics have to watch their sugars, and the heart failure patients have to watch their salt intake or any kind of large lymphedema or any kind of swelling. So those people should be monitoring their weight, and the diabetics should be monitoring their sugars. But definitely the hydration comes first.
And you feel those sports drinks are pretty helpful, like you just said, as long as you kind of pick the right one, because there's some I want to call them extreme sports drinks that are, there's a lot of sugar involved.
Yeah, there was a lot of sugar involved, but they were designed for a reason. I mean, not to promote one product, but I mean, Gatorade had it right back in the 50s and 60s with the football team. I mean,
Right.
the replacement, the salt and the sugar actually helps you absorb water better. Not only that, and it replaces it. So that's one of my favorites. And there's the lighter calorie side, but you need a little bit of electrolyte. You can actually just take a glass of water, an 8-ounce glass of water, and put a teaspoon of salt in it, but it's not as
It doesn't
pleasant.
seem as attractive.
No,
right?
but it works though
Right.
from an emergency standpoint. If you don't.
Well,
have
as a
that.
physician, how do you treat someone who's come in with heat-related illnesses?
It's definitely more helpful in the emergency department. We do a little bit of IV fluids in our office, but it's definitely more helpful in the emergency department. It's really being at home. Like if you notice somebody either not drinking or on a hot day, please be social and check on your neighbor. Just giving them about a half a glass of water every 15 minutes. You want to loosen their clothing. You can apply wet cloths, especially cool cloths. You could actually put a wet blanket around them and then fan them, which is helpful just to bring down that body temperature. But then once that progresses, and if they get confused or vomiting or unable to tolerate liquids, that's by far the time just to call 911 or to get to the emergency department, because you really need IV fluid replacements once that regulatory system goes away in the body.
We had a chance to talk just before the break, and we really think of heat illnesses as you're outside, like we talked about golfing, tennis, gardening. But a lot of people, especially in our community, can suffer heat-related illnesses being at home. Because like you just mentioned earlier, they just don't want to get up and go hydrate themselves or just cool off.
No, that's where the elderly population, that's why I'm here today. I mean, they're much, much more susceptible to this. One being the medications that they take. You're taking a high blood pressure medication, that's a diuretic. You're taking Lasix or furosemide during heart failure. Antidepressant drugs, a lot of the anticholinergics they're called, they actually stop the body's cooling mechanism. A lot of those will affect actually not only once you get more dehydrated, how it controls your body, but also you don't want to get up and then you get worse and your knee hurts, and it can happen in your own home.
Right, and that's amazing because you really think that you're in your home, you're safe, you're out of the sun, and then unfortunately in our economic times, a lot of people don't want to run the air conditioner.
No, not at all.
You know, don't worry about the money. If you're feeling, a heat to that extent, turn on the air conditioner. It's much better to just pay that extra electrical bill that's going to cost you a little bit of money than to
Save
visit
money.
the hospital.
Go to the mall.
There you
go to a senior center. Go to the movies and anything like that. That's a cheap way to do it to get out of the heat.
Right.
That's a very good way to do it.
That's a great idea. Speaking of that, how can we prevent heat-related illnesses? Obviously, then some of the things you've already talked about.
Yeah, you basically want to make sure, number one, you stay well hydrated. Number two, that nice light clothing. I prefer the Hawaiian shirt myself. And then also open up, if you don't have the air conditioning on, make sure you open up multiple windows, have a ceiling fan going, have a wet cloth, making sure fluids are readily accessible. And if you're not, ask for help. Ask for your neighbor's help or your family to help you. That's the biggest portion. Or if you know somebody next door maybe isn't as mobile as you or more advanced in years or have more of an illness than you do, go on and check on them. Make sure they're doing okay. Pour them a glass of water.
Right. And even wearing a wide brim hat is going to help you a little bit.
You betcha. Wide brim hat, sunglasses. Really just staying out of the heat. Stay in the shade, stay in the air conditioning. Right. Once again, if you don't have it in your own home, go visit somewhere that does. It's a good time to just go sit in the mall and be
Exactly.
social.
Doctor made a great point. All you need to do is get on your Laguna Woods Village bus and head over to Laguna Hills Mall and enjoy yourself maybe a cool drink and just relax and stay in the cool atmosphere like we have there, environment. Thanks so much for joining us today. Very important topic, especially with July and August coming up. And if you're having any kind of symptoms or signs, or you see a neighbor that possibly might have some of these signs, be sure and cool them off as soon as you can. And then, of course, if you feel there's an emergency, call 911 right away. Do not wait, and make sure they get the help they need. Give them a call at 452-3724 for more information, or visit them there on the web, and you can get more information regarding Saddleback Memorial Foundation. They are a title sponsor for today's program. We want to thank Dr. Mark Foster for joining us this morning. We'll be right back right after these messages.
The civic-minded citizens and physicians who planned Saddleback Hospital envisioned a full-service, high-tech hospital.
The medical center is a state-of-the-art facility that continually upgrades to remain state-of-the-art.
Our success is a highly skilled, diverse, and caring staff who meets all of your healthcare needs.
We represent virtually all medical specialties, and we practice in close proximity to you, our patients.
Saddleback Memorial Medical Center, keeping the village healthy since 1974.